Professor Gerlich, thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for having me.
Last year, you published a paper showing the impact of AI on our critical thinking. And since then, the results have been confirmed by many other studies. And at the same time, there is also an increase in the number of AI users since then. Is the situation alarming?
Generally, I would say no, it is not alarming. AI is an amazing tool. It is here. It won't go away. We have to learn how to use it. And that's where the problem is. It is that we have to learn how to use it, and that it seems the wrong use of AI might lead to consequences for individuals, for corporations, and for society. And the wrong use means that what we call cognitive offloading, meaning that we don't think ourselves anymore, but we take the offer that AI gives us to think for us. Now, you probably are going to ask cognitive offloading, but didn't we have that before? Because that question always comes. And in a way, yes, that is true. We are still using the same term, cognitive offloading, although the offloading means actually that we outsource data, don't store it in our brain anymore, and then we can use the brain for something else. For example, I might be half a year older than you, and when I was young, we didn't have smartphones, no mobile phones. So when we left the house, we had to remember all the phone numbers from our friends, families. Parents couldn't reach us as well. So I remember still the numbers when I was a child. Today, I don't remember a single other number because they're all stored, I don't know how many hundred in my phone. So that is a positive cognitive offloading. That is okay. I don't have to remember all those, right? The same is when we wrote books. We didn't have to remember everything, or when you write something on a paper and you store it. That's all cognitive offloading. The difference is, and this is where the term cognitive outsourcing slowly comes in, it is that we outsource our cognitive capabilities, meaning that we outsource the thinking process. And there's a big difference, right? I mean, you might have heard of the Google effect. It was a time when Google came out and people said, oh, now everybody gets dumb because now Google will give the answers. Well, no, we can't compare the Google effect with generative AI. And that's what we talk today, or at least I do my research, and I'm talking about as well in my book, is generative AI, the large language models, your ChatGPT, your Gemini, your Claude, whatever your go-to generative AI is. And they are different because when you ask Google about something and you're not using the AI part, which is now in all the browsers, then you get 1,268,000 pages, and it's going to take you still days to get the information that you were looking for, because all it gives you is just an approximation of an information that you wanted, right? AI, and the opposite, gives you really smart sounding, a full answer to the question that you have. And this is where the difference is when we talk about cognitive offloading with artificial intelligence, generative AI, and anything that we had before. Because now it's not just data that we outsource and we still do the thinking, but now actually the AI can do the thinking for us. And there is the problem. Now, therefore, let me come back to the question, is this now really bad for us? Well, generally not, because another study of mine, and as well others, have shown that if we use AI differently, then we actually can expand our own critical thinking and we can get smarter. And this is where the difference is, right? So generally, I would say, no, it's not alarming. Overall, probably yes, it is, because the right way to use AI is not the most convenient way to use AI, right? That's as well why my book is named The Convenient Trap, because it is the inconvenient way to use AI that really expands your thinking. If you go the convenient way and you just, enter your question into your chatbot, then you lose the opportunity to think for yourself.
And I would like to just push on the comparison with the Google point and how people inform themselves, because I agree that Google, there is 100,000 results each time we try to search for something, but it's also known that people don't really take the time to read those 10,000 pages, for example. So there is the trap that Google brings, which is many people look at the first result and we trust this one because there is behind an algorithm that made the selection for us, and we believe that this one carries the truth or something. Is that different? Because in the end, ChatGPT might simply show you what the first result shows.
Let me ask you a question back. Have you ever received a perfect answer in a Google search? Usually, I never get it. I still have to open pages, get half of the information, even if it's just, yes, people have a look at the first 5, 6 pages. And yes, you have the advertised pages coming first. And yes, Google makes money with that as well. So you get influenced on it. But I cannot really compare it because the AI that we use gives me a smart sounding, full and nearly perfect answer to the question. Let's put hallucinations aside and certain biases, right? But purely from a content, I would get it. It takes me as long as it takes to read what it says. When I do a Google search, I get web pages, and then I have to search on the web page, and I might get or might not get the information that I need, right? So I wouldn't compare it, even when we look on efficiency, and that where AI is so strong in our society. We actually look for efficiency. We want to have fast answers, right? Everything pushes for it on the job, everywhere, and AI beats that. I mean, Google still needs you to open web pages to read and then put the information together on your own. So I would not say we can compare that, not at all. And it goes beyond that because Google helps us to get data. The generative AI, and this is when we come to societal problems where, for example, young children use the AI as their best buddy and turn towards the AI instead of going to the parents, because it will always be nice to the child. It will always serve their confirmation bias, will always tell them how good they are. Parents can't do that, obviously, right? So that goes beyond. Google doesn't do that. Google doesn't influence me in that way. So these are two totally different things, right? So we cannot really compare the effects that Google or any search engine has on us and the large language models that we are using.
I will double down on my objection because, I mean, of course, when we think about doing some research, then most people will use Google and there is some friction and we need to select the information that is interesting for us and develop our own ideas. However, that's often an ideal of how we should think. But often in practice, especially with social media, people are easily influenced by the information that they get. There is someone that they trust and they're like, oh, this guy said that, so now I believe this. So AI does that, except it's not just an influencer or someone that has some impact on your thoughts, but it's a system doing this. Is AI still worse than the situation we have with social media in terms of imposing beliefs and checking them?
Well, I mean, the impact that social media has increased with the use of AI. It's no longer just a normal algorithm, but it's an AI behind it that is trying to show you what it thinks that you might like. It looks for patterns, so things you like will show you again. And this is where it becomes worse because you get only one-sided information. And this is usually an extreme information because on social media, if you have a neutral, boring explanation on something, it doesn't get the traction. Remember, large language models, AI looks for patterns, and more often it's being seen, the more likely it thinks it is correct. So if you don't have the traction, AI will not recommend you. So that means it's always, and that's where the problem that we see as well when it comes to political influence. I don't know whether the last Bundestagswahl in Germany, we could see in the analysis that specifically young people were voting either extreme left or extreme right. And then there were some researchers that were even interviewing 16-year-olds that were not allowed to vote yet, which party they would have voted if they were allowed to vote. And there they could clearly see as well, extreme left or extreme right. And further analysis showed that this is based on social media, right? So if you're a political party that's somewhere in the middle and is trying to explain, neutrally politics or policies, it never gets the traction. So AI influences social media already. So it made it in a way worse. It's the best tool to give you what you want or things that you want to see. But that limits your view. And if your main source of information is social media, then you are highly affected by artificial intelligence, right? And how it is selecting what to show you.
Mm-hmm. And so what's the process? What is creating those issues with AI compared to like a Google search or our own thinking? We read a book and then we make up our mind. What is the threat that AI poses?
Yeah. So it's the convenience, first of all, right? So it gives us acceptable sound answers quite fast. I don't have to think anymore. Now, the discussion in studies have shown that as well. I mean, I did a study on the use of artificial intelligence, and the discussion was that when people are offloading already at the very beginning, and in that case, the study, the research was to answer the question, what are the advantages of democracy? It's a very simple question that everyone can answer. You should not be a specialist to participate. And it was done in 3 scenarios. The first one was the participant had to answer the question without any tools, alone, by thinking, writing down, got recorded. Then we gave the participant ChatGPT-4 and said, now you can use ChatGPT-4 without any guidance. We recorded the results, and then we trained the participant how to use generative AI without cognitive offloading, and we recorded again the results. And what we could see was clear, right? So that human alone didn't do very well. Together with AI, a little bit better, but not really very good. But using it the right way, human thinks first, AI comes later, the results went up by up to 50%, the scores. And the problem is now, and this is when we then had people participating, and really, I remember one very extreme critical thinker that I highly respect, and he directly offloaded as soon as he got the computer in front of him. And I said, but you were offloading. No. And then we showed, said, oh yeah, but it doesn't matter. Because once I see the answer, I can think. And this is what we know from psychology, the anchoring effect, that you cannot really, you're so much influenced by the answer that you get in your brain. It's anchored in it that it's really difficult. You have to be quite a good expert to break out of that and get more creative through it, right? So that's why the difference is that we should think first the inconvenient way, right? Use AI as a tool. But the problem is that when you look on social media and all the trainings that you get, every word's being said, and OpenAI said this again for the new 5.5 ChatGPT, you should always start explaining what you need it for in very, very detail. And with that, you have the cognitive offloading, right? So that you're targeting, it thinks for me and does the work for me. And we are saying, don't use it in that way, right? don't tell AI what it is for. Why? Because it's trying to serve your confirmation bias. It's trying to predict what you would like to hear. Your AI knows you anyway good enough, right? So if you, I don't know how many hundreds of chats you already had with it, it already profiled you very well. It has a very good understanding what you would like to hear, and it will go in that direction. This is number one. So if you want to avoid it, don't tell it what the information is for. And when you look at the question, what are the advantages of democracy? And when we two discuss that, very soon we will come to the point, just because we think and discuss, just a second, there's not one democracy, right? The democracy in the US is different from Switzerland, is different from the UK, is different from, oh my God, oh, okay. And are we talking of nowadays democracy, or are we talking past democracies? And wait a moment, what are the advantages for whom? For the government, for companies, for the individual? And now we actually, once we do that thinking and discussion, we realize that we don't answer the question like that. The AI will directly answer the question. It will give you really sound points, whatever, 5, 6 points, and you're done. It looks professional, it looks nice, you are happy with it. It's mediocre, but it's okay. It was very fast. And your brain, yeah, looks good. But you are not on the level where we would have been if we would have first went the inconvenient way of thinking, and then we realize, okay, what kind of democracy? And then we can use AI asking, for example, what democracy, what different democratic systems exist? Not telling what it's for, just tell me what exists. It's like searching a database, right? You can use it like this, and then you think yourself, you build your own opinion, and only at the very end. And that's where the difference comes in. AI should be your sparring partner, your mental sparring partner. It should not be the tool that thinks for you. A sparring partner, right, where you can have a critical discussion. And that discussion you will have when you tell it, do not predict what I would like to hear. Do not serve my confirmation bias. And now give me opposing opinions. Very important, opposing, right? Don't tell me that I'm right, because I know that, right? AI will always tell me that I'm the best, the smartest, and everything is so brilliant. And after you said, give me opposing opinions, what might I have forgotten? And now you add to your thinking. You might get different views. Let's assume, because we all have experiences in our life, special education, the environment that we grew up, that your perspective on the problem is from one side. AI can give you perspectives from multiple sides. But you first have to define your own side, right? And then it can give you even, let's assume you look from a sociology point of view, then it might have a look and give you opinions from psychology or from different fields, right? And then at that point, you actually learn something. You add to your own thinking, and now you have a discussion, a sparring partner with whom you can discuss the topic. And during that discussion, you actually increase your own critical thinking. And that's why your first question, is it alarming? Not for the people who actually use it in the way that I just described. It is alarming for the people who use AI, and corporations, by the way, as well. I mean, look now, nearly, I'm speaking on C-level with Fortune 500 companies, for example, and they are rolling out Copilot, which is ChatGPT, in the background. Or some pharma companies have even multiple AI, generative AI programs that they offer their employees, right? One has 5, and all they tell them is, oh, just use it. Play around with it, use it. And this is where the trouble is, right? That might be alarming.
I'm going to use my critical thinking to try to summarize in a few words what you presented. So the main challenges is really the structure in the beginning. There's the one that you said, when the cognitive offloading happens, it's when we come in and we don't question the question itself and try to analyze it and try to understand its different parts and how we can approach it, but rather simply go with the question and get bullet points as answers, more or less. Now, one follow-up question is, if the issue is more the prompting, as I understand it here, that's the prompting that by default, it gives these convenient answers that are very quick and easy to grasp for the users. Is it something that, assuming that this is really the issue, the companies could also simply rewire the AI and the way it works and provide constructive answers? And what are the pros and cons of that for them?
The problem on corporations is that it starts what I was describing with, oh, just go and use it. It's not defined what AI should actually do, what the human should do, what are the expectations. The job descriptions have to be redefined, right? You cannot have, the same job. This is kind of a fantasy. We do the same job, we continue, get the same salary, but my AI does 80% of the work for me. That's not how it's going to work, right? So, and these questions have not been asked. The problem is when it goes even deeper, when we have a look on what we were talking about, hallucinations, when we talk about biases that AIs have, bias based on the training material, bias being created by the user because it's trying to predict what the user would like to hear. Now, the problem is not the specialized language models that companies have in research and development, for example. They might have a small language model or even a large language model trained on their own data, and specialists use that. No problem. No risk at all of cognitive offloading whatsoever. It's all good. The problem is with those commercial ones that we have, that goes into the Copilot, the ChatGPT, the Claudes, and so, right? Because isn't it obvious that when you ask, I don't know, what is your go-to AI?
Currently, I use Claude.
Okay. When you go to Claude and you ask a question and I go to my Claude and ask the same question, we will not get the same answer. Now, is this something that a company really would like? And if you ask your Claude or your ChatGPT 3 days later, the answer will be different as well. And that's the question really that we have to ask. That's why companies have to define the expectation and what should be actually the work that an AI should do, an AI agent even more, right? And what the human should do. It is not just about the prompting. The prompting comes along, but when you in a corporation push employees for fast answers and you go and you actually reward the fast answer that comes, which is acceptable, you actually foster cognitive offloading, right? And this is what, I don't know whether you experienced that, but we could now with AI give answers or do things that we could not do before. We don't even know whether it's good or not because we're not specialists in it, right? But it does it. And you give this now to your boss. And your boss says, wow, Kevin, wow, amazing. I mean, so fast. Looks good. Really nice. Well done. And this is where now the trust starts, right? I have positive experience. I trust AI more. I use it more. I offload more. And slowly but surely, we accept what AI gives us without being critical enough, what I was saying, especially in a corporate environment where the understanding often is that, where AI is the next SAP, right? It's kind of a software. But in the software, I have an input, I will always get the same output. If I do it 1,000 times, it will always be the same output. This is how our systems were built. And now I have a tool that creates each time a different output, which we can argue, well, might happen to a human as well who does the job, right? But we understand. So this is where, on a corporate level, it starts already that we didn't define what AI should do, what AI can do, and what the human should do and what are those roles, by just giving it as a tool, and it's not being used as a tool, but for cognitive offloading, and where you might end in mediocrity, that's then an issue, right, that no corporation wants to have. And that's why you have to start training your people on AI. But before you do that, define what the AI should do on everyone's computer in the organization, right? Again, I'm not talking about the specialized research and development AI. Amazing things, especially in healthcare, we can see, wow, amazing, in research as well. But these are specially trained on special material by specialists. I'm talking about the every employee's computer, where now Copilot or any other, some use ChatGPT, other use Claude, and they say, okay, just use it.
Yeah. And since we're on the cost, more or less, of AI currently, or like the impact that it has, and we're on corporate, I think that currently companies, what they see is at least a perceived benefit, a saving of times. And I've been in discussions with founders and C-suite people that were asking, basically in a workshop, asking, what will we do with the 5 hours that we save per week from now on? And I was a bit shocked because nobody reacted to that, because there was something, I did some research afterwards, called the Jevons paradox. I don't know, do you know this term? It is that basically when there is a progress in technology, rather than having time back to the employees, what we have is an increase of tasks that they need to do in the same time.
Of course.
And I read a joke that from someone, I think it was Ben Evans or something, someone like this, and he was saying that you would be surprised to know that the people at BCG didn't finish on Friday at 12 before they had Excel sheets. So Excel sheets actually didn't do it. They have to work over the weekend to finish those things. And so that's, I think, the challenge that we have right now. The executives, they're going with the idea that it's going to save a lot of time. At the other end of the spectrum, the employees have more tasks. They feel they need to do study after in the evening. They need to study to get into the groove of the AI tools and so on. And that's an increase of work that comes there. Is that part of the challenge that is also coming from this cognitive offloading, or is it just like now wrong incentives from the company that just want to jump on this train and like try to use it as much as possible?
It doesn't come from cognitive offloading, no. It comes from the drive for efficiency, but everything has its limits, right? So even if we say now, and in some cases, AI can replace the human fully, or up to 80%, 50, 70%, it's already possible. If it does that, then a company can give you more workload, but only to the point where there is no additional work anymore. It's like the economy. You cannot produce just what Elon Musk said, where I totally disagree. We will produce so many products that we have everything in abundance and everything gets totally cheap and everyone can buy it. No, this is not how the economy works, right? So it will come, yes, we get all more workload until there is no more work, and then we will reduce the human and let AI do the work. I heard, for example, from Microsoft, I heard that Microsoft employees are not using enough AI, and that they wouldn't get now headcount, but have to instead use now AI. So whatever more work comes, let's not hire new people in your department, use instead AI, right? And this is how it's coming, right? It's not going to be that we will have now more customers, we get more work because we can sell more products. No, it's not how the economy works, right? So at the end of the day, we drive for efficiency, and that means cost cutting, faster results, and of course AI is cheaper than the human. Of course it will be. And in the end, when we look at the AI agents that we have, they are being built to replace the work that humans do, either partially, lucky, or fully. in some cases, right? And this is now the beginning. We are in the year of agentic AI. But it's the beginning. Let's go down the road 3 to 5 years, right? Then it can actually do full jobs. And then we cannot now increase our production tenfold, 100-fold. No, we have the cost now low. We cannot create more work. It's just cheaper work that we have. But with the cost that we cut, the biggest factor are now the humans, right? And this is where it leans to. That's why I'm always saying I never liked the term when it was said, not AI is going to replace you, but a person who uses AI. And I'm saying, no, you replace yourself if you use AI the wrong way. Use it in the right way. If you are adding to the process, right, and AI does repetitive work, but you add to it, then you are valuable. But if you offload and just tell AI, do the work for me, there will come the day where your employer pretty much says, well, do I really have to pay you, I don't know, 150,000 a year that you tell AI, just do it for me? Because the prompting becomes easier as well. And an agent, you don't need to prompt anymore. It knows what to do, right? So in that respect, it's really about us as individuals to make sure that we use it correctly and we contribute to the process and we stay in control of the critical thinking. And this is where the difference between AI and humans is. I'm always giving the example of a candle, right? You know, romantic candle. And if you go to AI and say, look, I have a candle, can you help me to improve it? It will probably create a candle that shines brighter, longer, and is the cheapest ever. But it will never do the step to the light bulb, never to electricity. This is the chaos, the chaotic thinking that comes from the humans, right? And this is where the human critical thinking is needed, right? It is not in the efficiency part, because AI can do things more efficiently. It was as well at the time when the brother Wrights were inventing or created the first airplane. Science was still at the point and said it's not possible. So if an AI in that time would not have been able to create an airplane, because it looks for patterns, what has been published, and science at that time, the biggest pattern, said it's not possible. It wouldn't have been able. So we have to make sure that we humans are the chaotic, the creative, the extreme thinkers that go beyond the efficiency. Obviously, not every job has that, right? If you're an accountant, I mean, how much creativity is expected from you? Depends, right? So if you do it by the books, by the law or not, but you know what I want to say, right?
Yes.
But this is really important, right? And especially in the corporate environment.
I have two thoughts, but I will go with the first one first. So the first one is to push back a bit on the idea. You gave this idea of going from the candle to the light bulb. But actually, I mean, there's this quote, which is, I think, misattributed to someone. So I'm not going to attribute it. But that says, I think it was Ford. He was saying, if we had asked our customers what they want, they would have said faster horses rather than a car. So I think, I mean, even though, of course, humanity as a collective is extremely creative, the critical thinking is based of this development on just like a few geniuses that lives with us. So for the rest of the population, maybe anyway, that was not something that was really feasible or accessible, this kind of breakthrough.
Yeah, no, I meant, yes, that's true. We're not all Einsteins and we're not all Newtons or so. No, that is clear. It's just an extreme example to show where we add value. And the value is the way that we think. I mean, it's sometimes intuition, sometimes it's a feeling, right, that an AI doesn't have. And this is, it's just to make it simpler. I use this extreme example. On all positions, if our contribution is nothing to the process anymore, AI already won. because it can do it faster, it can do it cheaper. So we have to add to it. So what do we add? Now we can say, okay, supervise multiple agents, right? Yeah. Agents can already supervise agents, right? That's not the thing. And then how many people do we need to supervise 10 agents that already replaced 30 people or so, something, right? You know what I mean? So always when you look at the bigger picture, then it is clear that this what I call critical thinking, creative thinking, that this is an attribute that humans have. As well, the emotional intelligence, what we previously called soft skills, that those are not really an attribute of artificial intelligence. It is their pattern recognition, repetitive work, really being fast, doing that. So we have to make sure that we contribute with these skills that we as humans have, right? And the critical thinking is a very important part of it, right? So if we, even in a job where we don't invent new technology or new medication, and we are not the big inventors, but even there, our critical thinking should contribute to the process. If we are not used to it anymore, because all we do is just type into the computer or speak to the AI and say, oh, that's a question, and it gives you the answer. What is then our contribution? That I was able to ask a question?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, definitely. And one thing, the follow-up on that. So now we know in companies, there is these strong incentives for companies to invest in AI and to push the employees to also use it. And we said employees should kind of resist that. When we use AI tools, we need to voluntarily add some friction to be able to also add something more. The issue that I see here is, and it might be a slippery slope, but there's such a pressure from companies to now push the employees and say, you need to do it. The expectations from, if you set up a presentation, back in the days, it was, do that this morning, this afternoon, let us know what it is. And now it is, in 30 minutes, we want a presentation on this topic. How can employees push back? Is there a way? And that's why I think if they can't, and if there is this incentive and this pressure, the situation gets alarming because all the incentives go in the wrong direction, basically.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No, it is not so much about pushing back from the employees, but rather the understanding on the management level, right? That friction is needed in the process. It was really interesting. I spoke, it was last summer in Stockholm at the Future Talent Council. I spoke about AI, and there are head of HR, global head of HRs from large corporations. And there was as well the global head of HR from Lego, right? The children's construction blocks, right? And I explained that with AI, right? That it pushes for efficiency. It makes it so fast that humans in the loop are being pushed too much, and that we should actually we need to create friction. And he said something which was really interesting to me. He said, well, we have something at Lego which is called campfire. And this is when someone has an idea or something, calls a meeting, an unofficial meeting, non-scheduled, where they come together and do kind of a brainstorming, bouncing this off. And he said, we could use that and formalize it in the process where AI is being used. So the friction in the system should come systemically. So the management has to understand that it's not the employee who has now to push back and say, oh, this is now all too much, but it's an understanding, because at the moment, at least AI is not good enough, that beyond efficiency, we would actually increase quality. And this is where the human comes in, but the quality disappears when the efficiency is being pushed. The process gets faster and faster, and here it comes. You're just human in the loop, approve or do, right? And it's just push, push, push. And this is when the thinking gets pretty much pushed out.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just the employee. often it is just a misunderstanding or a lack of knowledge in management, not to understand that this friction is not because employees are lazy or because they just want pauses, but to improve the quality of the process, you need that friction. And the campfire that Lego has is something really interesting. And they can now, the management understands that they can formalize that in their process when using AI and saying, okay, we must have in certain points just campfires. Without AI, out, you stop here. We humans sit, think about it, discuss it, have that time. Then, you get the friction.
And also following up a bit on this, so the pressure, we said there's pressure on the employees, but it's management that needs to understand that these things takes time, so they need to take more time. But then I would say there's also like the market forces, because all the competitors, like BCG is delivering more and more slide decks than ever. And if you're into this space, then that means the client is not willing to pay you for one workshop after 3 days of work, but the BCG can do it in 1 hour because they have 2 guys and Claude that they're using basically. So do you think the market forces are going into this direction? Is it something we can also influence?
Well, the biggest disruptors will be the small ones, the ones that have not the thousands of employees, but they have their AI agents. Small companies, SMEs, having huge power now to impact the markets. The large corporation, the Fortune 500s, the legacy organizations, that doesn't work for them. Because you cannot just, what they feel is, they are afraid that their competitor, as well a legacy organization, as well a huge giant, might use AI and they might lose out. But we have to understand implementing AI throughout the whole organization is the biggest change management project any company has ever faced. And nobody should come with the first and second industrial revolution. This is all peanuts compared to what AI throughout an organization today means. It is so huge. And the biggest problems are for those legacy organizations. And yes, you are right. The small ones that use AI, we saw that even in the US with lawyers, legal firms. I mean, a lot in the US is pretty much based on analyzing cases, right? It's a case-based system. And you had there a team of 5-6 people sitting over hundreds of cases for 3 weeks. AI can do this now like nothing, right? And now you don't have to charge the $500 an hour or the $1,000 or $2,000, but now someone who just came from the bar and passed the bar can now offer that for $100, and he uses a few AI agents, right? These are the disruptors. And yes, there is competition, but we have to be careful. The legacy organizations cannot compete now with those small ones. And we'll have to see how the markets will shift, right? But when we stay on corporate sizes, right, within the groups, let's say the Fortune 500s, they face all the same problem, and they are all afraid that their competitor might have now an advantage because they use AI, but they as well don't know how to do it, do the same mistakes, and everyone is pretty much currently just rushing into AI without having a clear understanding. What should it actually do? It's just being rolled out, like I said, to every employee, and just use it. We don't know what for and how. Just go ahead and use it, because our competitors might do that. So we have to be careful. Yes, these are two different qualities of AI usage, and then competing with each other. Markets will shift, definitely. I mean, this is to be expected.
And when you say that that AI is the biggest project with change management around it, that's really, it's close to be comical, because usually, as you said, like the companies, if they have guidelines, is don't put the name of the clients in the the files that you upload on those tools. So I think, as you were saying, like there's really this rush of we shouldn't lose the opportunity. We need to have AI cases in our companies, and they just roll out more or less blindly there.
And this is fascinating because we see that not just on the legacy in the legacy companies, but we see that as well with Western governments. So I spoke last year twice at the United Nations, and it's interesting to see that the global South, developing countries, or let's say the less industrialized countries, have a totally different approach to AI. They actually ask, okay, how can it really help us? What does it give to us? While we, let's say Germany, Switzerland, and the US, China as well, right? It's all about let's support it because it's a multi-billion-dollar business, and it's even on the governmental level there's this push for it. People are not really asking themselves, okay, what are the expectations, right? Everyone just says this is a multi-trillion-dollar business and we cannot lose again. It's the same thing again, right? We cannot lose. Now we have in the Middle East, Saudi and the UAE investing hugely in AI development, right? China, we know, is in some parts leading already. We have the US, and then we have in Europe our AI development. And this normally, it has to go hand in hand. Government, corporations, they should. And we feel this, that here in Western countries, it's the fear of losing out. And with that, let's just do it. Have you ever thought about those Fortune 500 companies in the past, if they would do such a big investment or such a huge change? You know how long they would sit and discuss, and they would have, those thick reports, and then they make a decision right now. It's just, let's do it. I mean, can you imagine? And that shows already that this doesn't go the right way.
And there is a big assumption that we've been making in the discussion, but also that those leaders are making, is that AI is actually having an impact. And I've seen now there is quite a few studies that came out. There's one, I don't remember the source, but it was that 89% of companies report that it didn't see any impact of AI in the last 3 years. And there's also some that show that there is a perceived impact. They ask people, do you feel that you were more productive and the quality is better? People said that they thought that it boosted by like 25% the performance, but actually it slowed it down by 20%. So what do you think about the studies? Do you think it's solid? We are all hallucinating and we think we're better than it is actually?
Now, we have to be careful. Obviously, there are some areas where efficiency goes up, where we see as well that thousands of people are being released from their work and replaced by AI. But this is specific. We cannot go to every company and just ask. And then it was very interesting to see as well. I remember like 3 years ago, 3 years ago, I think it was, I asked companies in Switzerland whether they are using AI. No, we're not using, we don't. And I was just laughing. And I said, yeah, you don't have any regulations and you don't have corporate AI, but your employees are using it. And this was then a time, I think it was in, I don't want to lie, 2023, I think, or 24. Deloitte did in Switzerland an analysis of 1,000 companies and asked their employees whether they would use generative AI at their workplace, even if it is not allowed, right? And it was, I don't remember the number, 76% said, yes, we do. And at that time, companies would still have said, no, we're not using AI. It has no impact on us. So this is very difficult actually to research because people are using it, whether it's the AI that is on the corporate computer or on the phone, and how much this really impacts now their work. It's very difficult because you said correctly, that's about perception, how the people perceive it. I think it's very difficult in general to estimate whether the productivity went up in all sectors. You can do that in very specific sectors for very specific tasks. We can do that. We can analyze it. But overall, it's difficult. But it sounds logical. I believe that especially in the early times of AI, before the AI agents, so before 2026 pretty much, that AI had been, people played a lot around with it. Didn't know how to prompt, so they got results. Some were more efficient, others were less. In the end, it took them more time. I heard about that as well. It makes sense in a way, right? It is so it is so new, it is so difficult that it doesn't directly give the efficiency that everyone expected. I mean, I thought about that as well. But now with AI agents coming in that are trained on repetitive, very specific work, we will see, I believe, those differences, and we will be able to measure them. For me, the biggest measurement is when people in some industries, in some areas, are being replaced by AI, and pretty much you reduce your workforce. That means they reach the efficiency already that they for themselves created as a benchmark, right? And now they see we are at our benchmark, it can do it, the human is too expensive. So there the efficiency they reached, obviously, right? As long with human and AI, it's very difficult to analyze, especially as we were describing, if you don't have no rules, if you are not really describing the expectation of the AI, the expectation of what should the human do, and then you just tell them, use it, and then we ask them, okay, what was your own perception? That is important. It's an important information because perception mirrors as well how people feel about it, but it might not give us really the efficient answer. It might show correlation, but not causality, for example.
And right, following up on the correlation and causation, could it be, as you were saying, like the benchmark that you use to see does it have an impact on the companies is replacement rate, that people are being replaced by AI. Could it be that currently we're really in a recession, the world in general is struggling, unemployment is quite high, and that there is a lot of movement of workload. The companies, big companies, they rather hire in countries with cheaper labor. Is it possible that we assign some of this replacement with AI wrongly because it's simply a bad time where unemployment is high? Yeah.
No, of course. Of course, you always have to look at each individual case, right? Some of them in the media might just be misrelated to AI, and it's actually not. But we have cases where we can see where I spoke on C-level with companies, C-level representatives that said, we are now releasing a certain amount of people because we now implemented AI. So this is not what media, this is not where it comes out. And it was even then the discussion, then the government said, but no, because they informed the government about that. And the government said, no, you cannot release, give them different work. And the C-level said, but we have no other work, right? Now being replaced. So from those, I can see that there is replacement. So the benchmark there was met. But these are maybe specific industries. So we shall not generally, and I absolutely agree with you, we cannot go and say every company that's currently releasing workforce, oh, it's because of AI. No, that's not the case. So we have to dig deeper. But we have signals that in some companies or some industries, the AI seems to be more efficient, that it reached a benchmark that it could replace humans.
What we hear a lot also from mostly AI founders, like Sam Altman, for example, basically we're told that we don't have a choice right now, that the train is going and there's nothing to stop it. So we better jump on board or start to get used to it. Do you share this feeling, or do you think there's something that we can do? Is there something that state should intervene in? How do you see the situation?
So generally, yes, that's true. And it was already 4 years ago true when I had discussions about generative AI where it wasn't public yet, right? And an AI developer from one of the leading AI companies told me at that time, Michael, because I did an analysis where the governments should create frameworks to regulate AI. And he said, Michael, it's out of the box. Not even governments can regulate it really anymore at this stage. Because first of all, it's linked to electronics. Even if we regulate as we did with the EU AI Act, right, there's a little regulation. China doesn't have it. The US doesn't have it, right? Then we come to the point where then governments say as well, oh, no, and the industries, we lose our competitive advantage if we regulate and somewhere else is not regulated, right? So this comes all together. So generally, I have to say, yes, that's true. You can't get it back in the box. Even if we would now say, oh, nothing is allowed anymore, you cannot do it because AI, large language model, are open source, not OpenAI and not the Claude, but generally machine learning and language models are open source. Anyone can create it. There will always be someone who creates it, will always be someone who uses it. It's a multi-trillion-dollar business, influencing people for marketing, for whatever. It is just huge. So you can't stop it anymore, but it should be regulated. It should be in a way, it starts with understanding. First of all, let's all understand what generative AI is. Like I said, it looks for patterns. In itself, it is not smart. And in itself, it has certain risks. I'm not saying don't use it, just be aware of it. The general awareness on governmental level, on corporate level, on individual level is very limited to what actually generative AI is. So first is awareness. Second is, let's regulate it in a way because it starts, let's assume that artificial intelligence will really replace large parts of the population and those people will go into unemployment. Government has to pay for that, right? Now, in our current system, that's very difficult to do because those companies that use AI, they are being taxed on their profits. And that happens 1-2 years later, sometimes 3 years later. So until the tax income comes in, right? So we would need a tax on the use of AI, for example, right? So a lot should happen now. It's not just the regulation, how to use it and not to use it. We need this. Although I'm always saying, and I love to do that when I'm speaking somewhere or with students, always saying, have you ever heard of a law that you're not allowed to rob a bank? And then everyone says yes. And I said, and how many banks are being robbed? And now think about a multi-trillion-dollar business. Even if you put the rules there, they will be broken. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't set rules. Still, we have to set the rules. Because it's then as well, by setting the rules, we discuss actually what AI is, where the risks are, what should be limited, what should we support, what shouldn't we support. So actually the creation of that limitation means a dialogue that is very important. And we set a clear message. And people that break it, and we might find them, they get punished. But we have to expect that companies will break the laws, right? Because it's such a big business, and they will find opportunities because it is not limited to a specific country. It's everywhere, right? Because it's the internet. So we should, there should be a better discussion about AI, a dialogue on the usage of AI, a human-centric use of AI. And that's what I'm standing for. I'm standing for human-centric use of AI. I'm not against AI. And so, but that works under different rules and on all levels. So the macro level, government, corporations, the meso level, and then with the individual as well. And it starts and continues then with education, right? AI in education. How should it be used? The impact of artificial intelligence into our society is unbelievable. People are not realizing it. The impact is everywhere. Again, not saying let's stop it, but let's discuss what to do, right? And that's what I'm hoping for, that we have those discussions between government representatives of the economy of certain sectors, of education, universities, and individuals, right? So that these discussions happen more.
And last question to close it off. I saw a book published lately which was called "If Anybody Develops It, We All Die," and they were referring to Edge AI. So as I understand, you're not an AI doomer. What do you think about this? Do you think Edge AI will happen, and would it be bad?
I do not understand the push for a superintelligence, because there is no logic how that will work out well. When I'm being asked that question, I'm always referring back with a question, and I want to ask you, how much time did you spend today to protect and support an ant, the little animal, tiny ant? How much time did you spend?
I didn't, but I put a mosquito out without killing it.
No, but just to understand, if something is 1,000, 1,000,000 times smarter than you, why would it focus on supporting only us, the humans, right? We cannot limit it. We understand it. It can write code already. If it that becomes that smart, then why would it do? So what would be the reaction of humans if the AI doesn't care and is not supporting them? Then the fear comes, and we would try to unplug, and that would be a situation where the AI would obviously try to protect itself and would react, right? And this, I do not understand how that can end positively. Artificial intelligence, the way we have it right now, I think, okay, wonderful. It will help us in healthcare sector, for example. I believe that it will prolong human lives. It can help us in certain developments further. But to go to AGI or a super intelligence, I'm very critical about that. It makes no sense, and the risks are really very, very high. And for me, it's just really strange that all the tech CEOs, the owners, all in 2024 and 2025 invested into doomsday bunker. Why would you do that? All of them. All of them.
Well, on that, Sam Altman, each time he takes a mic and start talking, it's between utopia and dystopia, and it's basically 50-50, he says. So if the ones that are pushing for those technologies are actually having these ideas, that's not really comforting.
Yeah, but the problem is that those tech giants believe I only have a chance if I'm the first who develops the super intelligence, and then still hope for the best, right? And it seems we are there. So please don't ask about AGI and super intelligence, because there I'm a little bit more critical. When we look at agentic AI where we are today, I believe these are very interesting, amazing tools can be if we use them correctly, and if we as a society discuss and prepare. If there's going to be a systemic unemployment, then we have to prepare the population about it. If you get today unemployed, your social value goes to zero. You could have been the most important person before, and your neighbor on the day you get unemployed gives you no more value. And this, if we have systemic unemployment, that has to change. This is a cultural change, right? And all that. This takes time. There's so much to discuss, to prepare. And that's what I'm lacking a little bit, are those discussions, right? The discussions between, like I said, government, corporations, universities, science, and representatives of the normal population, right? So
Great. And it's great to close up on this topic because it shows you have a nuanced view. When I read your work, I thought you were really supportive of AI, but there is this gap between AI and AGI. So super interesting. But thank you so much for your time. It's a fascinating topic. And I will lead the viewers and listeners to your book, which is already out, right?
yes.
Exactly. The Convenience Trap. I think it's a fascinating one. It's also accessible. It's not only academical. And it's available
exactly.
already.
Exactly. It's a non-academic book. It explains everything for the normal reader and has this nuanced discussion,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what I wanted to reach with the book as well, to start that conversation for the wider population.
Fascinating. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure talking to you, and I wish you a nice evening.